and you start feeling like it's a lock-in, and your confidence goes up and your belief in yourself goes up. Because if you can run that well off non-specific training, how well can you run with your specific training? So we all want to run PRs in probably every distance, right? Because why would you not? If you're training for a marathon, it's probably pretty nice to get a PR in the 5K along the way. We want all of them, but we expect that we're not going to necessarily PR in an 800 meter when we're training for a marathon, don't we? And the 10K, the 5K, the mile, we kind of have to tune up for those. If you want to run well, even over a mile, you've got to do the speed work, don't you? Well, we think we do. And to some degree, you do. But I'll tell you this, I had an experience where when I first moved to Asheville here, I was doing a track workout with a big group here. And some of these runners are pretty darn good. They're 220 something marathoners. One of them said, when you're in shape, you're just in shape, kind of across the board. Because he had just run, I don't know what it was, but he'd run a 10K PR, but also whatever other distance, I don't remember, a mile or a half marathon or something. He's like, yeah, it's kind of like when you're in shape, you're just in shape. And there's a lot of merit to that. So I'm going to share with you what running leaders have done recently in just the past 1 week. And we're going to talk about Tim, and then we're going to talk about the Tri-Phasic model and how it unlocks your ability to be able to do this. All right. So let me tell you about Tim. He just ran Boston and he PR'd. He was going for a sub 250. He ran a 252. So is that success or is that failure? It's not for us to decide, it's up for him. And it was a mega success. It was a PR and it was on what's traditionally considered a difficult course. So Tim, he positive split after the Newton Hills because they were difficult, but still ran this PR. Okay. But here is the really fun part. Let's rewind 2 weeks before the race. And he ran a 10K. And let's rewind about 2 weeks or so before that. He ran a half marathon. Okay. So we're jumping back in time. That half marathon that he ran, I mean, spoiler alert, right? He ran a PR, but he didn't train for the half marathon at all. Zero. And there's two reasons why I want you to hear this. Number one is like, how did he do that? How can you PR at the half marathon when you're training for the marathon? Because you're doing more endurance runs, longer long runs that are slightly slower, and you're neglecting specific half marathon pace, aren't you? Sort of. And this is the mistake that most runners make, is they train basically too hard. They train perpetually for the race that they are focused on. So for a marathon, a lot of times marathon runners might think, well, I'm going to start doing a couple miles I'm going to do 5 miles at marathon pace. And they're months and months and months out. And then let me do 6. And then let me do 8. And then I'm going to do 12. And I'm just going to build up until I'm doing 20 miles at marathon pace. And then surely I'll be able to run marathon pace for the race. But the problem is you can only improve that one metric, running at marathon pace. You can improve it really well for about 6 weeks before you sort of plateau and you have to do something else. So if within those 6 weeks, if you're not fit enough to be able to do the 20-mile marathon pace run, so you start it at like a 5 and then 8 and then 10 and then 12, well, now you're kind of plateaued and you never are able to do those big workouts like the 20, which would be quite a big workout, right? That are really going to move the needle. So starting those workouts too soon is going to cause you to plateau your fitness and not have a skyrocket in your fitness, right? But here's what Tim was doing. We took his marathon training, his marathon pace training, and it goes where? In the base, support, or specific? Of course, it goes in the specific phase of training, only 6 weeks. So leading up to that, he was doing support training for his marathon, which guess what? Looks an awful lot like specific training for a half marathon. And earlier in the support training, you train maybe faster, but shorter. And that looks a little bit more like 10K training, doesn't it? So you actually get the training for these events en route to your peak race. But then they all stack on top of each other and then you get to really peak. And that's what causes a breakthrough in performance at the end of it. Okay. So Tim ran a 121, mid 121 half marathon, which is really good. PR for him. Great job. And he wasn't doing any workouts for it. He was training for the marathon. But remember, like en route, you kind of touch on these things that would almost look like workouts for it, but we didn't peak him for it. So here's the takeaway for this before we move on to his 10K. All right. How would you feel? Ask yourself, if you have a race coming up, don't care the distance, just whatever race is important to you and you want to peak for that race, pick it. 5K, marathon, ultra, don't care. Just pick one. And imagine that you're training really well leading up to it, but you haven't really measured your progress. You haven't done any tune-up races. Okay. Now imagine that let's say you're training for a marathon. Okay. So you run a half marathon tune-up 1 month before. Now here's 2 scenarios for you. I want you to feel what these would feel like. All right. Scenario number 1, at your tune-up half marathon, you run a PR by a small margin. It's still a PR, but you trained for it. You trained leading up to that half marathon. You wanted to run a PR. So even though your marathon's coming, You knew that half marathon was coming. So you did half marathon workouts and like faster tempo runs, and you did whatever it was, right? Whatever gets you ready for a half marathon. And then you did it. You pushed really hard. And then on race day, you ground it out, you redlined it, you really did everything you could, and you squeaked out a PR. Okay. Think about how you feel. So it feels good. You may celebrate, but think about how you feel about your marathon. You probably feel optimistic about your marathon, but you also know that you worked really flipping hard to get that half, and you just barely made it. So that marathon PR, it's like, can you do it? Well, if everything goes perfectly and you work just as hard, because it's longer, it's harder, right? You're going to hit the wall maybe in a marathon, then maybe you can do it. So it feels good because you ran a PR. But now contrast it with this. Let's say instead that you did not train for that half marathon whatsoever. You didn't focus on it. You didn't taper for it. You almost don't care about it. It's a tune-up race, and that's all it is. You focus on the marathon only. And when 3 weeks before the half, when you could do a half marathon workout, nope, you do a marathon workout instead. You get yourself prepared for the one thing. Now, race day comes and you run the exact same time as you did in the first scenario and you PR. But how do you feel now? Because your PR came from not training for it. Now you ask yourself questions like, wow, what can I do at the marathon? If I'm that fit in the half marathon and I didn't even train for it, what am I going to be able to do in the marathon? And you start feeling like it's a lock-in, like that PR is so done, I'm actually going to go for more. And your confidence goes up and your belief in yourself goes up. And you start to have faith in your training, because if you can run that well off non-specific training, how well can you run with your specific training? Oh boy, the sky's the limit. Here it comes, and you're eager and you're salivating and you feel ready. I got goosebumps thinking about it, right? So this is what happened to Tim. Then fast forward only 2 weeks before Boston, he ran a 10K, a 10K. Now we didn't do any 10K pace workouts throughout any of his training. We did lots of strides, and then we kind of transitioned into tempo runs. We didn't do any 10K, none whatsoever. And he went and he ran 2 weeks before Boston, a PR in the 10K, a lifetime PR. He ran 37 something. It's really fast. And on the road, I mean, for God's sake, this is pretty fast. So that's even less specific to the marathon and still PR'd. How does he do it? Basically do it through that structure of the Tri-Phasic model, not just through going out and training. Okay. Did you like that video? Great. Here's how I can help you even more. Click the link below, put in your name and your email. This is completely for free. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the 3 things that elite runners do that you're probably not doing. They all have a system for how they train, how they think, and how they actually follow through and apply what they know. These are the 3 shifts that elite runners make that most runners don't. And I'm going to share that with you inside. It's completely for free. Put your email, put your name below, and I'll see you on the inside. 2, 1. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.